Welcome to Missouri Sports Talk. I'm your host, Cameron Staley, and today I have here with me
Jace Rackers.
Jace, back for another one. I know we filmed part one a few days ago, but for video terms and people seeing this, it was actually yesterday that it went up. So we're back at it for part two. This is 16-1 today. Number 16, we have the New England Patriots. My initial ranking, I had the Pats at 17. I think they had a pretty solid draft. Their first round pick was Drake May, a quarterback out of North Carolina.
I really like Drake May. I thought he was better than Jaden Daniels at being a quarterback in general, but I don't mind Jaden Daniels going in front of him.
I completely agree. Jane Daniels was my favorite player in the draft. I can't hide that. I mean, I've got a Madden 21 franchise with him as the quarterback, but I mean that I guess that doesn't really matter. But that kind of shows, I've liked Jane Daniels since 2020. He's been one of my favorite quarterbacks, and I was really happy to see him go at number 2. I do think Drake May has the edge skill-wise, though.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels is obviously a dog, and I don't blame anybody for picking him over Drake May because he has higher upside with his scramble ability and his rushing ability. But I do like Drake May more as a quarterback.
Their second-round pick was Jalen Polk, a wide receiver out of Washington. This was a big trend in that first video. A lot of Washington offensive players went off the board. Of course, Michael Penix at 8th overall quarterback from Washington. For anybody that doesn't know, he goes to Atlanta. That was probably the worst first-round pick of them all. It's not because Penix is bad. It's because that was just a bad spot for him to go. One of my least favorite picks in this draft was in the 6th round, Joe Milton III out of Tennessee. This is another quarterback. This is their 5th quarterback on the roster.
Yeah, I like Joe Milton, but I don't know why you would draft 2 rookie quarterbacks. I think Joe Milton has a lot of upside, but still, I don't get it.
I'd have to agree. And then 7th round, Jaheim Bell, we'll mention real quick. Tight end out of Florida State. I think he's got upside for him. I don't think he'll make too much noise, though.
Yeah.
15, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. 2 very amazing picks. Tight end out of Georgia, Brock Bowers, and their center, Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon.
Those first 2 picks alone are top tier, in my opinion. I thought JPJ was the top interior O-lineman in the draft class. Obviously, he fell down a bit, but, I mean, him and Brock Bowers are just absolute beasts in both aspects of offense, in the running and passing.
The Raiders had very good first 2 rounds, but, I mean, in the 3rd round, it kind of got a little bit worse. This is why they're at 15 and not in the top 10. I mean, if we were just going off of the 1st and 2nd round alone, they would probably be almost to the top 5. I'd say they'd probably be in the 7 or 8 range. But they took a offensive tackle in the 3rd round named Delmar Glaze, and it was a heavy reach. He was projected to go 4th, maybe 5th.
Yeah, maybe, but, I mean, that O-line wasn't really the best in the league, and I don't blame him for taking an offensive lineman. But him was a reach, yeah.
I think it's a solid crack at it, but I do think that there are tackles on the board that they probably should have taken over him. Now, in the 5th round as well, another one that I didn't like was Tommy Eichenberg, a linebacker out of Ohio State. He was the worst testing linebacker at the combine, and I don't know if that will translate to the NFL or if he'll kind of break out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of top-tier players who didn't test well at the combine, but, I mean, what he did was pretty awful at the combine, in my opinion.
I'd have to agree, and before we move on, I do want to mention their 4th-round pick out of Mississippi State, DeCamerion Richardson. This is a corner. I believe he had the 2nd fastest 40 time. This is speed, and they took him kind of matching with Xavier Worthy, honestly.
Yeah, speed kills, and you can definitely see that in Las Vegas with Henry Ruggs and all the speedsters in Las Vegas.
Let's get to 14. This is the Cincinnati Bengals, all right? I personally had them a little bit lower myself, but, I like Amarius Mims, but he's a very raw talent. I believe he's only started 6, maybe 8 games total in college. That was it. But he allowed 0 sacks. So it's risk reward. And I know the first round's a little dangerous to go risk reward, but I think that his skills will translate to the NFL.
Yeah, the low experience in terms of games is a bit scary, but you look at Cincinnati's offensive line and you just need the best person on the board to fill in those gaps. And I think they did a really good job with Amarius Mims.
They also took a defensive tackle out of, I believe, Michigan in the second round, Chris Jenkins. I think that he'll be all right. Nothing special. Of course, we mentioned Amarius Mims. I like Jermaine Burton in the third round. This is a wide receiver out of Alabama. I think that he's going to come in and start right away with the loss of Tyler Boyd.
I wouldn't doubt it as well, especially since T. Higgins was thinking about leaving and maybe requesting a trade. So, yeah.
In the fourth round, also, they took Eric All, a tight end out of Iowa. I like that pick. But before we move on, I do want to mention their third round pick out of Texas A&M. It was McKinley Jackson, the defensive tackle, and he may have been the worst testing player at the combine of anybody.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that.
I watched a little bit of the combine. I mainly watched the defensive line because I didn't have a lot of time. So I firsthand watched McKinley Jackson be the worst player at the combine. So I don't love that pick.
Yeah, I don't either, to be honest, and it did bring just their overall grade down a bit.
I'd have to agree. Let's go to 13. This is the Green Bay Packers. I enjoyed this draft. They took 11 players.
That's wild.
So their first two picks, Jordan Morgan, an offensive tackle out of Arizona, and Edrin Cooper, a linebacker out of Texas A&M. I personally like both of these picks.
I do as well. I think they're really high upside, low downsides. So, yeah. I think that offense, even without Morgan, is pretty special since Love and Jacobs is going there. And their wide receiver core is super deep. They're super young, and they're super talented. And I'm pretty excited for that offense.
I believe this is the youngest team in the NFL.
I don't know.
I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. But down the board, they beefed up the linebacker core as well. Of course, I mentioned Edrin Cooper, Texas A&M linebacker. They also took Mizzou's own Tyron Hopper.
Nice.
So I think that he may not get immediate playing time, but he will definitely play a role in Green Bay.
Oh, yeah.
In the fifth round, they took a safety out of Oregon State, Keaton Oladapo. I have personal experience with this, of course, working at Learfield. I keep going back to that. I love these Oregon State players because I experienced this firsthand.
Yeah.
I believe I worked 10 or 11 of the games this season. I think 11. So, I got a lot of experience listening to these guys play.
Yeah.
So I like Oladapo. I don't know how much he's going to play in Green Bay, but I think that he'll be a solid guy on the roster, and he'll definitely play a lot of special teams.
Oh, yeah.
And before we move on, our last one that we'll mention for the Packers is Michael Pratt, a quarterback out of Tulane in the 7th round. I don't really understand this one. I don't hate it, though, because I think that Michael Pratt's really good. I think that he should have gone in the 4th round, but once Rattler dropped, Pratt dropped as well. So he lands in Green Bay. And, of course, they are already set at quarterback, so Pratt will be the backup. But I think in preseason, that is a guy that you should watch out for.
Yeah.
Let's go to number 12 now, the New York Jets. You didn't like this one as much as me. On almost all of them, you had a higher grade for these teams, but this one, I had the Jets at a B+. You had it at a B, so obviously only one spot lower than me. But, I really enjoyed this one. They had Olu Fashanu in the 1st round, 11th overall. That's an offensive tackle out of Penn State. I think that he's a brick wall, and, he may not get immediate playing time because they just signed 2 tackles to, beef up the offensive line for Aaron Rodgers. But maybe if not year 1, year 2, he's going to be out there, and he's going to be very important for the Jets.
Yeah, I think he's really good, but I do like the other tackles in the class a bit more, to be honest.
I understand that a lot, and they waited until the third round for their next pick. That was a kind of a trend in the last video that brought teams down, was sitting and watching. We said that a lot of times, but the very first pick of the third round was Malachi Corley. Is a Western Kentucky wide receiver. He's got a lot of speed. I think that Aaron Rodgers will like him.
Oh, yeah.
Down the board, Braylon Allen. I loved this pick. Running back out of Wisconsin. This guy is ripped. I think that he'll be very good as the second string behind Breece Hall.
Yeah, I really like Braylon Allen as well. I'd go as far to say he's in my top players, or not players, but running backs in the class.
I'd have to agree. In the fifth round, they took 3 different players. We're going to mention all of them because there's a few things to mention about all of them. First off, the quarterback out of Florida State, Jordan Travis. I know this one, I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it's a bit of a question mark because he played very good at Florida State, but I don't think he has the NFL style to be a starter.
I mean, sure, but those same people also said that about Patrick Mahomes. So
I would have to agree. I am a Florida State fan, though, so obviously, you guys see me that I'm not, being really biased. I do think that Jordan Travis will be solid, but I don't think he'll ever get to, a franchise role.
Maybe. I guess we'll have to see.
Their next pick was Isaiah Davis. This one may not be important to you at all. I know you probably don't know this name. This is a running back out of South Dakota State, but I wanted to mention it because he was a former Joplin Eagle.
Oh.
So the Jets took a guy from Missouri. He went on to play with the Jackrabbits, and now he's a Jet.
Yeah.
So shout out Isaiah. I'm sure I'll probably never have him on the show because I don't have that kind of pull. But, if anybody has connections, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
And their last one that we will mention before we move on, 5th round, Quantez Stiggers. He's coming from the Canadian Football League. He's not even out of college. And I did see a story about him. His father passed away, and he dropped out of college and, kind of kept with the football, went professional, and now he's got his NFL dreams going.
Yeah, didn't he go to like a fan controlled league, and then he went to the CFL?
Right, yeah, fan-controlled football.
Yeah.
That was a thing when we were freshmen, and like Johnny Manziel was in it for a little bit, and then Terrell Owens played like 2 games, and it never really caught traction.
No.
11, we're going with the Indianapolis Colts. I did enjoy this draft. Their first pick was Laiatu Latu. We mentioned this in the first video, how the defense slid down the board. I did not expect Latu to be the first defensive player off the board, and especially not at 15. But there he goes. He has had a lot of injuries in his career. He was forced to medically retire, and then he came back. I think that he'll still be fine, though. I think he'll be a really good player, and I'm not too worried about the injuries.
Laiatu Latu was probably my favorite edge rusher, to be honest, with his ability to quickly get around players, kind of like Chop Robinson. Sure, he has to work on the power moves a bit more, but it's just pretty watching him shed blocks and get around tackles.
So down the board in the second round, this is Adonai Mitchell. A lot of people don't like Adonai Mitchell because he's got, like locker room troubles. I'm not worried about that. Obviously, their ownership showed that they're not worried about that. But, during their draft stories, they showed that he actually has a daughter. So I think, honestly, any locker room troubles that he has, I think those will fade because having a child that he is so close to, I think, that's going to mature him a lot. So even if these personality issues are a problem, I think here, even this year, we probably won't be seeing any of that from him.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy that he slid so far, especially since he was supposed to be kind of mid-first round or whatever, but I think his issues will fade as well. I mean, the difference in personality traits between the NFL and college is just completely different.
I'm only really mentioning them because I like their names. I don't know a whole lot about them. I know where they've gone, though. Their third-round pick, Matt Goncalves. offensive tackle out of Pitt. And their 4th-round pick, a center out of Wisconsin, Tanner Bordellini.
Huh.
I like that name. I think he was actually one of the quicker ones in the offensive line group at the combine. Not that that really matters, though, as a center, but, fun fact. Down the board, another Oregon State guy I will mention, Anthony Gould. He's a wide receiver. I don't know if he'll do a whole lot, but... And then, before we move on, of course, Jalen Carlisle, I believe is how you pronounce it, a Mizzou safety. So,
Nice.
Go Tigers.
Way to represent.
At number 10, we have the Baltimore Ravens. This one was not a bad draft. I mean, they actually really stuck at their own pick. Like, they didn't even really trade that much. They're sitting at the 30th spot in every round. So, in the first round, the second round, the third round, the fourth round, the fifth round, and the 7th round, they had their own pick.
Yeah.
So, but they did, of course, trade and get a few different picks in that draft. But their first 2 picks, Nate Wiggins, a corner out of Clemson, and Roger Rosengarten, an offensive tackle. I think those 2 picks were pretty solid for them.
Yeah, I really like Nate Wiggins' ability to suck in these balls and just get interceptions and whatnot.
I mean, while we're on the topic, actually, their 3rd-round pick is Adisa Isaac, a linebacker out of Penn State. In his first interview, someone asked him what NFL players he wanted to sack, and he said, I want that Josh Allen sack, and I want that Mahomes sack.
Yeah, there's a lot of football terms that can be taken out of context.
So, anyways, as we try to get back on topic, they had 2 picks in the 4th round. I want to mention them both. Tez Walker, a wide receiver out of North Carolina. He had a little bit of controversy in the start of the year. He transferred from Penn State, and NCAA declined his eligibility, so he wasn't able to play for the first few games for the Tar Heels. So I thought that was very interesting when that was all going down. I know a lot of people were really angry and getting really mad at the NCAA.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't very happy either because they've got literally almost everybody transferring right now, but he's the one guy that gets declined. So
Yeah.
I didn't really understand it. I didn't look into it too much to see exactly their reasoning. I know they didn't have really that great of a reason, but I saw when it was happening. And then a guy that slid down the board, actually, TJ Tampa, a corner out of Iowa State. I think that he'll be all right for Baltimore. I think that he can probably fit in the system.
Yeah.
And then lower down the board, they took Devin Leary in the 6th round, a quarterback out of Kentucky. I didn't even think that he was going to get drafted.
Yeah, some of those, especially him, it was kind of weird to see him drafted, especially to a team like Baltimore. But, yeah, that was kind of weird.
I honestly, they're sitting at that spot. It was very late in the draft. And I was like, they lost Tyler Huntley. Maybe they take Michael Pratt. And I was like, surely not. Surely they won't take a quarterback right now. They'll probably get a UDFA or a 7th rounder. And then Devin Leary pops up on my screen. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But, I mean, he played good at North Carolina State. And then he transferred to Kentucky. And he played really bad this year. So, it is what it is. He's not going to start anyway. So, it's not a super big deal. But, that's something I did want to point out. So, of course, we are in the top 10, as we said, with the Ravens. But let's get to 9, the Los Angeles Rams. Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. These are both FSU players.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I think Jared Verse, I thought that he would go maybe 12 to the Broncos or 13 to the Raiders. And then, of course, the defensive draft, as we've said multiple times, slipped down the board. So he falls right into the Rams' hands. And then he made it to L.A., and they made the call to Braden Fisk that he was getting drafted, and Jared Verse was on the other side after they told him. And they shared a moment, and it was pretty special.
Oh, I could only imagine.
It was, like a who's cutting onions kind of moment. It was pretty cool. They seemed very, very happy.
Yeah.
And then in the 3rd round, they took Blake Corum, a running back out of Michigan. He has the record now for touchdowns in a single season for Michigan. And, I mean, he was kind of the leading player for Michigan this year, honestly.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with Michigan running backs if it's them or their O-line because that O-line is really good. But I think Blake Corum is a dog.
Down the board, I like their 6th-round pick, Bo Limmer, a center out of Arkansas. I think that he could do probably pretty solid for them. At 8, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, of course. This is what everybody's here for. Maybe the Chiefs fans sitting behind the screen right now maybe disagree. If you guys do, let me know in the comments. Or if you agree and you like the spot, let me know that too. But I predicted that Xavier Worthy pick. I made a Twitter post about it. I had like a top 5. It was number 1 was Xavier Worthy. Number 2 is Darius Robinson. If he made it to 32, which then of course they traded up, then it was like Lad McConkey, Peyton Wilson, and I don't know. It was one other guy. It may have been Adonai Mitchell, honestly, but I could be wrong about that.
I see no better fit for Xavier Worthy than the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they're notorious for draft or having very fast receivers. Like they made the Legion of Zoom or whatever. And I think Xavier Worthy is just a very pure wide receiver.
I'd have to agree. And then in the 2nd round, they traded up 1 spot for Kingsley Sumatia. I don't know if I said that right.
No.
I know Kingsley's not going to watch this video, though, so I'm not too sad about it. But
Fair enough.
I guess I should say Kingsley if you see the video. Sorry, but that's not too big of a deal. But later down the board, the picks, they're okay. But I do want to mention Jaden Hicks. He fell down the board. He got to him in the 4th round. I think that he'll be solid for the Chiefs, but he's got a lot of depth ahead of him, so he may be, a little further down the chart to start off.
Yeah.
At 7, we have a division rival, the Los Angeles Chargers. I really like this pick. At number 5, it was Joe Alt. I expected him to go 7 in Tennessee, and then the Chargers would take Malik Neighbors, and they surprised me, but I think that in the long run, that was probably the better pick for them.
This is actually what I predicted was Joe Alt going to the Chargers. I mean, with Harbaugh, his just offensive mentality, it only makes sense for that to happen.
I'd agree. And then at 34 overall in the 2nd round, it was Lad McConkey, a wide receiver out of Georgia. Mm-hmm. I think that was a really solid pick. I think really the only 2 places that I saw Lad succeeding very, very well was Los Angeles and Buffalo. I thought those were the 2 best fits for Lad, and, that's where he goes.
Yeah, I mean, Lad isn't the most well-rounded receiver, but when given the chance, I think he could really shine.
I agree. Down the board in the 3rd round, Jim Harbaugh gets one of his Michigan guys, Junior Colson. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed that one. All right, we're back at it. Our camera died, so that doesn't show up for anybody else, but that was an extra 10 minutes for us just sitting here. Let's get to the lower rounds of the Chargers. I do want to mention Notre Dame corner Cam Hart. I like this one. I think that he'll do good under Harbaugh.
Oh, yeah.
And 6th round pick, Kamani Vidal, a running back out of Troy. I have a fun fact for you.
What's that?
He is the great nephew of famous baseball player Hank Aaron.
Oh.
I know you probably don't know who Hank Aaron is because you're not the biggest baseball fan. He was a good enough hitter to have an award named after him. So the best hitter in the MLB every year gets the Hank Aaron Award. So if that tells you anything, Hank Aaron was a very good player. I'm not the most knowledgeable on him, but I know
That's more exciting.
I know his worth. Yeah, but Hank Aaron is an absolute athlete. So I think that would be pretty cool to be related to him.
Oh yeah.
But before we move on, Brendan Rice fell to the 7th round. He was projected to be 3rd, and I don't really know why. I guess I didn't really look into it a whole lot. Do you know if he had any injuries or?
Brennan, why he fell?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just not very fast. He doesn't run the crispiest routes. I mean, he's just not the best receiver. I'm not saying he can't be like his father, but he's not right now.
I mean, with the Chargers roster, he could probably be 4 or 5 in that room.
He could get some some reps, but I don't know about a bona fide position for him.
I think he could be in the 20s or 30s in receptions at the end of this coming season.
I could see it.
So let's go to 6 now. We're to number 6, Jace. I also forgot to mention once we got to the Kansas City Chiefs, we entered our A- grades. 15 through 9 were our B+ grades. But anyways, we are in the A-, of course, as I just said. This one's the Washington Commanders right here. I like this draft.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job all the way around.
We mentioned Jane Daniels a lot earlier, so there's not a whole lot to say more about him other than he takes a lot of hard hits. I don't know what it is, but like when he's running, it's almost like he like kind of like hops up and like tries to like shield the contact, and he gets absolutely speared.
I think he tries to do too much when he's on the run.
So hopefully that doesn't cause any injury troubles for him. And then in the second round, Johnny Newton from Illinois, defensive tackle, he kind of fell down the board. I think that he could be pretty solid for Washington. They do kind of have a stacked interior, though.
I mean, it's so-so, but I could see him getting reps.
In the second round as well, later on, they took Mike Sanerstill. I don't even know if I said that right. Sanerstill? I think that's right. Sanerstill. A corner out of Michigan. I think that he'll be pretty solid under Dan Quinn, of course. Dan Quinn's a defensive mind.
Yeah.
And Ben Sinnott, a tight end out of Kansas State. That's a weapon for Jaden Daniels to throw to, so I think that'll be all right as well. And then the very last pick of the third round, Luke McCaffrey. This is Christian McCaffrey's little brother. Of course, for the older viewers, Ed McCaffrey's son.
There you go.
I think that he could actually be really good in Washington, you know.
I think Luke could make a name for himself, yeah.
Number 5, some people may want this one higher. I know a friend of the show, someone that has actually been on, Jacob Hatcher. He thought that we would have this one higher. I showed him the list earlier because I was working on it. But we have the Chicago Bears at 5. I know, you know, of course, some people may want that a little higher. I think they're at 5 because they only took 5 players in this draft.
Yeah, I have them a bit higher than you, of course, but I think the players they did pick were just really good.
Now they've got Caleb Williams at quarterback, they've got DeAndre Swift at running back, and they've got Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Romo Dunze as their wide receivers.
Yeah, Caleb Williams is going into a perfect situation, and so is Rome. I mean, this offense, if it doesn't pan out, then it has to be a coaching issue.
I'd have to agree. We could see Eberflus getting shipped out if they don't do very good this year.
100%.
But in the 4th round, they took Iowa's punter, Torrey Taylor. I think this one's kind of interesting because, you know, it's a punter in the 4th round, and you're supposed to have one of the best offenses in the NFL now. So, I don't know. I think he's good, but 4th round?
Yeah, I mean, drafting any special teams player in the top 4, maybe even 5 rounds is a bit of a reach.
I'd have to agree with that. So we're getting to the point where we're wrapping up a little bit. This is our last A- grade. The Arizona Cardinals at 4. This is a really good draft. They took a lot of players as well. There's 7 players here that I highlighted that I really enjoyed in this draft. So, of course, let's start off with their 2 first-round picks. Marvin Harrison Jr., a wide receiver out of Ohio State, and the edge rusher, I'd say more defensive end. I mean, ESPN had him listed as edge, but he's a defensive end, defensive tackle hybrid. Out of Mizzou, Darius Robinson.
Yeah, the only problem I have with Marvin Harrison Jr. is I'm afraid they won't use him enough. I mean, he's good at anything, and in any other draft class, Malik Neighbors would be the top receiver, but MHJ is just that guy.
Hopefully Kyler will be able to see him.
Yes, he is quite tall, though.
That's the problem, though. But Darius Robinson, bull rusher, I mean, he's got the moves. I think that he's going to be really good for Arizona.
Yeah.
Down the board, I say down the board, but in the second round was Max Melton, Rutgers corner. I think that he will come in and start right away for Arizona. This was a really rough team, so I think a few of these guys will come in and get a lot of playing time right away.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could go out there and start for the Cardinals right now.
Honestly, their running back that they drafted in the third round is Trey Benson out of Florida State. I think, just like that, I think he's the second string behind James Conner.
Yeah.
And then in the third round, Tip Ryman, one of those. Sorry. He's the tight end out of Illinois. I think he's going to come in and start right away because the tight end room is not amazing in Arizona.
Yeah.
So, watch out for Tip. I'll try to figure out the pronunciation for him. I got that word right.
Yeah.
I'm having pronunciation troubles in this video at some points. But down the board as well, Dadrian Taylor Demerson, a safety out of Texas Tech. He fell a little bit. He was supposed to be in the middle of the third round, maybe start of the third round. He falls to Arizona. I think he'll be all right for them. And the last one that I do want to mention is Xavier Thomas, an edge rusher out of Clemson. I think that, he'd be probably a pretty solid pairing with Darius Robinson.
Yeah, sure.
Let's get to 3 now. We are in the top 3. We are on our A grades. These next 3 picks next 3 teams, are all A grades. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 3. This one consisted of Troy Fautanu from Washington, another Washington guy, offensive guard, and a center, Zach Frazier, out of West Virginia.
I think Troy fell a bit, and I think he ended up in a perfect spot. Go ahead.
I'd have to agree with that. I mean, they just killed it on the offensive line in this one. Not to mention in the 4th round, Mason McCormick, a guard out of South Dakota State. So, I mean, they went heavy interior offensive line in this one.
Yeah, I mean, they got to protect their 2 QBs. And Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, they need somebody to block for them. I think those are 2 bona fide dogs as well.
2 things to mention. We mentioned the quarterbacks and the running backs. First off, they just declined Najee Harris's 5th-year option. We'll see what's to come to that. I don't know if they want to make an extension earlier or if they're going to get rid of him. But, if they do get rid of him, why'd you take him in the 1st round? Also, they're saying that Justin Fields may return some punts and some kicks a little bit this year. What do you think about that?
I think that's bullshit. I think it's just fake news. But I think he could be put in different situations. I mean, it's rare to have 2 quarterbacks that are kind of okay at running and throwing. But I could see him coming in like a 2 quarterback set.
I'd have to agree. In the 3rd round, they took Roman Wilson, a wide receiver out of Michigan, and Peyton Wilson, a linebacker out of North Carolina State. I enjoy both of those picks.
I am a super huge fan on Peyton Wilson. I mean, you see him play on the field, and he just plays like his head is on fire.
As I mentioned as well earlier when we were talking about the Chiefs, he was a player I listed at number 4 for their top 5 list of guys that they could take in the 1st round. I mean, I'm pretty sure that he was the fastest linebacker, I should say, at the Combine. And, I keep going back to the Combine, but the Combine's very important. And, I think that Peyton Wilson will be very good for the Steelers.
And the crazier thing is he tore both of his ACLs, I believe.
That's why he fell to the 3rd round.
Yeah.
Because he's been dealing with all these injuries. If he hadn't had 2 torn ACLs, I promise you he would have been at the end of the 1st or start of the 2nd.
100%. I mean, I watch his film and I see him chasing down receivers. I mean, this kid is good.
And another one that I want to mention, an absolute dog in the 6th round. His name is Logan Lee. He's a defensive tackle out of Iowa. I know I talked to you about him back when the Combine was happening. I don't know if you remember that at all, but I had you pull up his highlights. That's how excited I was about him. I mean, he's very stocky, but he's a little short, and I think that's kind of a little bit why he fell to the 6th round. He's a little small for defensive tackle, but
Sure.
I think that he'll be a really good role player for Pittsburgh. He may not exactly be a star, though.
Yeah.
But Logan Lee is a name to look out for in the NFL. I will say that right now. Let's get to number 2 now. This is the Detroit Lions. This is the home team of the NFL draft, and they absolutely killed it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how I feel about drafting 2 corners in a row, but I do like the two corners they took.
The corner was their weakest link as well, though.
Sure.
And with Cam Sutton getting arrested, he's probably not going to play in the NFL again. I mean, it was a wide open spot. Like, I can't even name a corner that they have right now besides the two that they drafted.
I mean, you're right. I mean, that was pretty much their only weak spot on their team. I mean, they just signed Penei Sewell and Amon Ra to like the two highest deals for their positions. And I think that's like the tipping stone for the Detroit Lions to win the Super Bowl.
The two guys that we were talking about is Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw. Yeah. Born in Dallas, goes to Mizzou, and now he's to Detroit, so he keeps moving north.
Yeah.
And I like Terrion Arnold a lot. I thought, honestly, some mock drafts that I did, I had him at like 13 to the Raiders or 12 to the Broncos. And, we keep going back to this. I hate to be a broken record, but the defense slides. So does Terrion Arnold. And he gets picked up by the Lions at 24.
Yeah, I think Terrion Arnold should have been the first corner off the board. I do like Quinion Mitchell, but I mean, Terrion Arnold had more competition, and he really shined.
I think it was a toss-up there. I would have taken Quinion Mitchell first, though, but, it's a system thing. I
Sure.
definitely could have seen Terrion Arnold going first, though. Down the board, two guys that slid very, very heavily. They're projected third-round picks. Mekhi Wingo, first off, we will say, a defensive tackle from LSU. He's got a lot of power. He's got a quick burst. I think that he'll be pretty solid. I think he's coming off of injury, possibly, which is why they've got him pretty low. And the same thing with Christian Mahogany, an offensive guard. They took him in the 6th round as well. I believe both of them have dealt with injuries, and that's kind of why they slid to the Lions. So, I like those picks.
Yeah, sure.
We both graded it an A. That's a unanimous A. I think that's like one of the only teams that we had the same exact letter grade on the same team.
Yeah.
So, number 1, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. Mm-hmm. I think this one's kind of obvious, really. I mean, they killed it. I know you don't really like Cooper DeJean a lot. Maybe it's because of his race, but that's all right.
I do like DeJean. I just don't like him as an outside corner, which is where he played.
I would have to agree. I think, but really the team that he goes to, they've got two set guys in the boundaries now. They've got Darius Slay, who is aging. I mean, he may only be in Philly for 1 or 2 more years. And they've got Quinion Mitchell, which is, of course, their first-round pick. They take back-to-back corners, which is something that you said you didn't really like with the Lions. But I like it a lot with both of these teams because they actually planned on taking DeJean in the first round, and they saw the slide. They saw Quinion Mitchell literally fall into their hands. And then he was still sitting on the board for them at 40, and, they just had to do it.
I don't blame him for taking Quinion Mitchell or Cooper DeJean. They're obviously dogs, but yeah, I think Cooper DeJean playing a slot corner, maybe a box safety. I think that's a perfect fit for him.
I would fully have to agree with you on that. Down the board, one of my favorite players in this draft, Jalix Hunt. He's from Houston Christian. He's an edge rusher. A lot of people didn't like it because he hasn't faced a lot of competition. That's very obvious with Houston Christian, but that's an absolute athlete. I think that he'll be really good.
Yeah.
And then a running back, Will Shipley out of Clemson. I think that he'll be pretty good, but obviously he's got some guys to sit behind. Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
So I think that he'll be a pretty solid role player. Another role player that I think will be good, Ainias Smith, a wide receiver out of Texas A&M. I think he played a little bit of running back, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. I could be thinking about somebody else that was on the roster 2 or 3 years ago that he was playing with, but I think that Smith is pretty shifty. I think that he could be all right for Philly.
Sure.
Their 5th-round pick, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Mm-hmm. His dad played for the Eagles, yep. So I like that pick there. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. And then in the 6th-round pick, a projected 3rd-rounder. He's dealt with some injuries. He's dealt with dropping problems. It's Johnny Wilson, a wide receiver out of Florida State. I think this is kind of a sleeper pick.
Maybe. I think that wide receiver room in general is pretty good, though. So
I would have to agree. So, that's what we've got for today. I'm pretty proud of this list. I like how we ranked this one.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, my camera died again, so I'm gonna go charge my battery packs. Of course, I lost my partner in crime. But anyways, I do want to mention, of course, first, thanks for watching. Second off, next video, Mason French interview. So tune in, guys. This has been Missouri Sports Talk. We'll see you next time.